everybody. Hope y'all are having a great day. Joining me today, Mr. Jeffrey Santa from the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. Wanted to have Justin on too, but if you can't tell by my voice, I am sick. Not sick too bad that I can't do this, but Justin couldn't join us today. So we're here talking with Jeff. We're going to talk about multiple different things, Browns related. We're going to get into Baker's future, Odell's future, and who knows what else. We're just going to kind of see where the wind blows here. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I think we're going to have some fruitful discussion here. And truthfully, I don't know if our media and people in the YouTube landscape, talk about this stuff a lot as far as, we are almost halfway through this year. I understand that the sentiment is that you have to be focused on the next opponent, especially if you're the organization, but thinking about the offseason and thinking about some of these players we have with future contracts is important as well.
Yeah, and we had a discussion, I believe it was before the season started, if I'm correct. And we talked about all these guys, and more particularly, we talked a lot about Baker. And we'll get into some of that and how it's changed over this first half of the season, especially with me. If you guys have been paying attention to the channel, I've been talking about this quite a bit. So first of all, when you look at the future, I think the easiest position you can look at, as far as we know for a fact there's going to be change, to me, is at the wide receiver position. And Odell Beckham Jr.'s name is always getting brought up in trades. But given the fact now that it's been 3 years, 3.5 years, whatever it's been, it hasn't worked. I don't think it's going to at this point. And we've now seen two different quarterbacks with Odell Beckham Jr. in this system, with Baker, obviously, and a little bit of Case Keenum. Neither time it's worked. What do you think Odell's future is in Cleveland? Do you think there's any chance that he sticks around after this season? And could he go by Tuesday?
Here's my thing with OBJ, because I heard this week some people on the normal ESPN and other sports channels like that talking about who won the trade with OBJ and who we sent over to the Giants, namely being Jabril Peppers being the biggest name, and I believe an offensive lineman as well. And they were saying it was a wash basically so far, which, as far as the talent exchange, I would agree. However, before I get into OBJ's future, I'm a firm believer that we won the OBJ trade simply because it was the first big move not the first big move, but a move for a superstar that this organization took in a long time. I think that was the first step to even getting, off-season acquisitions like we did this year. You see people that wanted to come here, Malik Jackson, John Johnson III. It seemed like he took less money to be with us. So while OBJ hasn't worked out from a talent and on-field perspective, I think that it was a moment for this franchise that really helped us and made a lot of sense. Now, that being said, moving forward, he has not worked. I totally agree with you there. But I think that if he truly wants to win, he's going to take less money to be with us. And I don't see how Andrew Berry could turn that down. Now, if he's putting on a kind of like a fakeness about him, if he really wants to go somewhere else and get paid, I believe someone else is going to pay him, and he would probably not be on the roster next season.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Going back to that trade, in hindsight, staying at 17 and picking DK Metcalf would have been the right decision. But given what we gave up, like you said, it was a first-round pick, I think a third maybe, Jabril Peppers, and Zeitler was the one who was involved. Yeah. And then we got Olivier Vernon and Odell Beckham Jr. I think that moment was I agree with you in that sense. It was a big step for the organization, because historically we've seen them be afraid to go out and get guys, even going into the past draft. So I do agree with you there. And looking forward, I just think, next year, if I'm not mistaken, Odell Beckham Jr. has 0 cap hit on the Browns if they want to move him. And I just don't see this organization paying a wide receiver $15 million, because, I have my own problems with the play calling and some of the schemes, and we'll talk about that with Baker. But at this point, I think it's not necessarily OBJ is not, getting open or anything like that. I think he's just not that guy. I think we've put this, position of him being this elite receiver so highly that now if it's anything but, we're so disappointed. And I think the reality is he's just not that guy anymore. He's just a guy. Now, he could go to a different system and get back to the Giants OBJ. But I just don't see him on this team going forward, especially after this year. What do you think specifically for Tuesday? Do you think there's any chance he goes by the trade deadline?
In a perfect world where I was the general manager, which I would never want to be because you can't fill Andrew Berry's shoes at
No.
this rate. And here's the thing, because the business side of it seems clear cut that we could probably trade him to a team that's tanking. But optically, and as far as locker room goes, which I actually think that so far, that's probably the biggest improvement I've seen from OBJ this year. Probably the only improvement is that he doesn't seem to be whining on the sidelines. I mean, some games last year, he had his shoes off in the fourth quarter of the Steelers games, like just really bad, glaring problems that I saw with him last year. I haven't seen that. So he's calmed down a little bit, maybe humbled out because of his injury. But the Jarvis Landry dynamic makes me hesitant to trade him because I don't want, they're boys, they're buddies. They play basically all their adult football together. So it only makes sense to keep OBJ around. In a perfect world, like I said, where that doesn't matter, I would straight swap him for Brandon Cooks at this moment.
Agreed.
I understand that's going to be a hot take, and here's the thing with that, which I do understand arguments of that not working, because I truly don't see how there's a wide receiver one in this system, regardless of who it is.
Yeah.
I think that you saw OBJ have stellar play with, a regressing old Eli Manning. So I don't think, like, to say that the quarterback is the issue, whoever it is, Baker or Case. I just don't see how. It's tough for our wide receivers in general to get rhythm. Now, with that being said, I think Jarvis, you saw him scripted heavily in the first couple drives of the Denver game, and that looked a lot better than anything I've seen with our quarterbacks and OBJ all year long.
Yeah, it's really weird because Jarvis, when you watch the both of them play, Jarvis's value for the Browns versus Odell's, it's
So
not
much
even
higher.
close. And
Yep.
that's the crazy thing is, because one thing I thought when we got Odell Beckham Jr. was, okay, he's a similar play style to Landry, but he's a little bit more elusive and, that kind of thing. So I thought it was going to work great. I really did. But so far, you have not seen that. We'll get into Baker here in a second, but one thing that I've kind of been really focusing on when it comes to the future of the wide receiver position, I think Andrew Berry, you can stay at my house. I don't care. Just come down to Columbus and watch Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave. That's all I
Right.
want. I think, especially Olave, to me, I think the way he plays the game, such a efficient route runner. To me, if you put him in a kind of Landry skill set position on this in this scheme, I think he could be really good. What do you think they should do as far as if they do move on? You talked about Brandon Cooks. Well, let's just say hypothetically they go young. Where do you want to see them go at the wide receiver position?
Believe it or not, I really do think that our wide receiver room is in good hands. I know that we have some young guys that definitely need developed. I think we'd be very lucky to get either of the wide receivers coming out of Ohio State, unless something drastic happens, we move up. I don't know. I think they're going to be top 15 or 20 picks, maybe both of them, really. I don't know, though. It seems like I'd rather have an Ohio State wide receiver than an Ohio State quarterback these past couple of years, but it seems like the SEC wide receivers do go first in that sense. But I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones, the minimal times we target him, has played well this year. Unfortunate that he's hurt now, and it doesn't seem like he's going to play this week. And then I think Demetric Felton could be. I was saying the weeks Jarvis Landry was hurt, I did not understand why we were not seeing Demetric Felton in the slot more. Mm-hmm. And then I think Anthony Schwartz could be your vertical deep threat. I think that Andrew Berry's already similarly reconstructed, passing the torch from Jarvis in the slot and OBJ being your, really the defense has to worry about you with some of our younger draft picks in this past draft.
Yeah, I agree. And Schwartz, we talked about it in the offseason. He's such an intriguing guy, but can he develop? So far this season, it hasn't been as bad as I expected, if I'm being completely honest.
Right.
But there's still a lot of work to go there. So good thing is he's got plenty of time. Let's jump into this, the kind of big debate here, if you want to call it a debate, discussion rather, on Baker Mayfield's future with the Browns. Last time we
Mhm.
talked, I took the position of if I was Andrew Berry, I would have got it done in the offseason because I thought that Baker was going to play his way this season into that Josh Allen range. And I didn't want to pay that, so I was hoping that we would pay him in the offseason. We didn't. So far, he started off the season really well, gets hurt, and then it's kind of been downhill from there. Um, where do you see Baker as far as today? What is he worth for the Cleveland Browns if they sat down and had to either pay him or let him walk today? What do you think he would be worth?
So for me, which these reports this week have been troubling for me because I was someone in the offseason who said, let's wait, basically on the opposite side of you. And I'd like to hear your standpoint now because there's so many options here and the situation is poor. Everybody knows the situation is poor, so we just got to get that out of the way. It's unfortunate that he's playing hurt, but you have to factor it into his contract. For me right now, 30 million's at the top for what I want to pay him. I really don't want to give him the 35 to the reported 37. I think 30 million is pretty generous, honestly. I think that with the injury and even outside of, let's take his rookie year and then let's take, his 6 or 7 game stretch last year where he proved to be, we saw some form of consistency. I still think 30 million is pretty generous. I don't think we've seen enough consistent football and we haven't seen the scheme. It's similar with OBJ. You're not going to pay OBJ 15 million. I don't think that the fan base is in a panic mode if Baker Mayfield is not the quarterback. If you realistically look at who Kevin Stefanski's won with in his career with, Case Keenum, offensive coordinator, all the way to the NFC Championship game. Case Keenum's best year, newsflash, Case Keenum's best year is better than Baker Mayfield's best year. It's weird to say, 11-3 and to the NFC Championship game. Baker's best year is 11-5 and 1 playoff win. So I'd like to hear your standpoint, though. Are you on board with the 37 mil?
Oh, hell no.
Really?
I'll say this, and this is one thing I've kind of been hitting on. I still think that Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think, can he play or can't he play? I think he's proven that he can play. He has not reached his ceiling yet. Now, the problem with that is we've seen his floor and it's bad. It's very bad. And my biggest problem with Baker is the ups and downs, the roller coaster that having Baker as your quarterback has been. They joke about it on Twitter. There's memes about it. Baker
Right.
sucks, then turns around the next week and plays like a Pro Bowler, and then
Yes.
he's half and half. Then he sucks again, and then he's great. It's just this constant inconsistencies. So the way I look at it right now, if I was Andrew Berry, I would say, okay, I've seen, glimpses of what he can do. We know he has a strong arm, which is very valuable in the NFL. I forget who it was on ESPN that said, we know he doesn't have a strong arm. You're an idiot. You should be fired yesterday. Baker's
Right.
got one of the strongest arms in the NFL. Now, the accuracy coming out was the biggest thing, when it comes to why we picked him number one. You just didn't see that accuracy, especially in that draft. That has been up and down. We've seen that, we've seen him be really accurate, and then we've seen him airmail balls that have guys wide open, and it just doesn't make sense. So, with that being said, if I'm Andrew Berry, I'm not paying him any big contract right now. If he finishes out the year and it looks decent and you say, okay, Baker, here you go, here's 30 million over 5 years, I would be more comfortable with that than saying, hey, we believe that this is the real you. We're going to give you 37, what you were talking about. I wouldn't do that. I think, and this is probably what I'm predicting, is we're heading towards a Kirk Cousins or a Dak Prescott route here. Either he plays on the fifth year option next year, which is 18 mil, which I think we both are fine with.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you can franchise tag him. Now, the question then becomes, are you going to be, Washington and say, we like you, we just don't think you're our guy, and let him walk? Or are you going to be the Cowboys and say, we're not really sure, but we're going to keep you around. And then at the last minute, hey, okay, let's get this done. I think those are the routes we're heading towards. And again, I'm not comfortable with Baker right now because I've defended him for so long, and I'm getting tired of the same old song and dance bullshit that we do every week, trying to explain, hey, why did he suck this week? Why was he so great? And, I'll let you talk here, but the last thing with Baker, I think this offense really handcuffs him to an extent. I think he handcuffs himself. Don't get me wrong. But what I talked about, what's his best attributes? Strong arm. What do we never do? Throw downfield. And if you got guys not getting open, Kevin Stefanski, do your job and get them open, So yeah, that's where I stand right now on Baker. I'm thinking, fifth year and then franchise tag if you don't feel good about that.
So I guess my question is, so if let's just say he plays out the rest of the year, and then let's not do playoff hypotheticals, but let's just say we make it. He plays the rest of the year, we make the playoffs, and he comes in and his camp and his approach is this basically strong arm Andrew Berry. He says, I'm not taking anything less than 37 million per year for like 4 years.
Okay.
What are you doing? Are you paying him?
Okay. So you're saying Baker plays out this year, and you're saying he's solid or he's good? What do you?
He's been. Let's just stick what he is. Now.
He's been Baker.
65% completion percentage, 2-to-1 touchdown. Say he has 6 touchdowns and 3 picks. Yeah. Let's just keep it with those ratios.
Here's what I would do. And he's not going to like it. I think Baker is a very you screw me, I'm going to screw you kind of guy.
Right.
I would say, listen, Baker, we're not going to do that. We still believe in you. We just need to see more. And I would force a franchise tag because, that's the thing with the tag. It's not like you have a decision in the matter. So I still would tag him. But here's my thing. And, Justin knows I'm a draft junkie. I'm sure
Right.
I look at this quarterback class.
It's bad.
It's weird because there's no clear number one. There's not a ton of great names in this draft. The one you thought in Spencer Rattler has now been benched. He might not even be a first round pick, let alone number one overall. But there are 2 to 3 names that if you told me, hey, we're going to move off Baker, we're going to pick this guy not number one, but in the first round.
Right.
And then you start over, rookie contract. You get to keep all these guys here. I would strongly, strongly consider that. I really would. And my number one, Matt Corral from Ole Miss. I think he's kind of a unique player, right? He's a guy who can make every throw on the field. He kind of reminds me of a smaller Justin Herbert in a sense that he's got a big arm. He's, Herbert coming out had a lot of criticism. I think his game is very similar to me. And big complaint we have with Baker, not mobile enough. This kid is mobile enough. He's not blazing fast, but good enough to get the job done. My number 2 is Malik Willis out of Liberty, who, he's the guy that people are going to talk about. This is Lamar Jackson. You should have taken this guy number 1 overall in 2018. But I think he's got a lot of work to do when it comes to becoming a professional quarterback as far as passing. I think he's got a better arm than Lamar. but his ceiling is like a Kyler Murray, and that's a very intriguing thing there, especially with somebody who's a lot taller and stronger arm. And then my number 3 is Desmond Ridder, out of Cincinnati. Big guy. I think he's played fairly well this year. But really the top 2 are the only guys that I would say, okay, Baker or these guys. And I think that's the decision here. I think at the end of the season, and again, they don't have to make a decision, but I think it would be smart for them at the end of the season. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, probably Haslam. We know how he is. He's going to want to be there.
Yep.
And say, okay, here's our options. We can keep Baker at this number. How much do you believe in him? Or we can go the draft route. Odds are we're going to have to give up picks. So are you comfortable with that? And then we have the rookie contract. Those, I think, are the big decisions that need to be made. What do you think about that? Sorry, I rambled.
No, you're good, because there's a lot to talk about. And this is why it's so tough to talk about Baker Mayfield, because I will say this about the fan base and about people who, if you're actively wishing for him to fail, that's just weird. That's just not really being a Browns fan. If you don't want the team to succeed, then I don't really see you as a fan. But it's kind of the other way around, where it's like, if Baker does good and we lose, like Baker Mayfield is not like, the Browns are going to be here when he's retired in 10 or 15 years, or if we get moved off of it. It's like, it's not Baker or the Browns. It's actually both of them. But to your draft points, I think 2 years ago, which I would say Herbert was the shocking one, that Herbert came into what I would say was not a great scenario with the Chargers. I think that they were a subpar scenario, not bottom of the barrel, but subpar. He made it work in his rookie year, similar to Baker, similar situation, not as bad, but he made it work, rookie touchdown record. I think Joe Burrow, people expected him to come into Cincinnati and turn things around. I don't know if they expected it this quickly, being at the top of the AFC through 7 weeks in his second year. Obviously, he was hurt last year. But if you look at the players this year in the draft, there's never been more quarterbacks in the first round. All the ones that went to bad situations are, of course, playing bad. Zach Wilson, hurt, playing bad. Justin Fields, I feel bad for Justin Fields. Yeah. I really do. Trey Lance even goes to, you thought before the season, San Francisco was a decent system. There's been some weird ups and downs over there, except for basically the last guy who fell the furthest, Mac Jones. He goes to Bill Belichick and the Patriots, a competent organization, and he's playing the best football out of all of them at this point. Trevor Lawrence has probably played more talented football, but the Jags are just not a good, situation down there. So this is my thing about the NFL, because I don't want to pay him $37 million, 4 years, $100 million guaranteed. Absolutely not at this given point in time. And based off of that, it's easy to say, okay, let's pay him the $18 million next year on the 5th year and then go and tag him. I really don't want to tag him, because if I'm certain on how the franchise tag works, it's the average salary of the top 5 players of that position. So the top 5 paid quarterbacks are probably going to come out to, 37, 40 anyway. I don't want to do that. The NFL doesn't reward. There's no rewarding for, no, you're good. You don't improve in the league if you stay passive. Yeah. And people don't want to talk about this with Baker, and I think Andrew Berry throughout his whole tenure as the general manager has shown activity and being aggressive the whole time. I think Austin Hooper was aggressive, potentially over aggressive. Jadeveon Clowney for up to 2 seasons, we've been pursuing him. Other players, we move up in the draft and, we rebuild the offensive line pretty quickly, but this is the point where people don't want to think that we could maybe trade Baker. But if you see teams around the league that sat on their hands this offseason, they're all doing bad. Washington football team, they did nothing. They said, we're going to have Tyler Heineke, a flashy, athletic AAF player, be our quarterback. That's a bad outfit. Denver, Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. It's going to be good to have quarterback competition. It's not good to have quarterback competition. That means both guys probably suck. We saw it last week, case in point. You got Lamar Jackson, you got Joe Burrow, and you got the Steelers probably looking for somebody. And you have Aaron Rodgers only linked to AFC teams when he's on the move after this season, potentially Denver and Pittsburgh. If Aaron Rodgers comes to the Steelers, we're going to have the worst or the fourth best quarterback in the division. I don't have trades in my head, and people are going to be on me for this, but I would rather shell out assets that we have now instead of paying Baker and him not being a part of the system, because we would just rather not have him be, because he's not a top 5 quarterback in the league. Do you think Stefanski's offense would probably be a little bit different if we had Aaron Rodgers under center? I think it would be. Maybe I'm wrong. And here's the last thing I'll say about this is that if we pay Baker, which I agree, we haven't seen his ceiling. I will agree with you there, but I don't think the argument is fair about his ceiling, because he's never going to be in a better situation than he was the 6 or 7 games last year and the games in the season this year. If we pay him $37 million, we're not going to be able to keep defensive assets. We're probably not going to keep Wyatt Teller and the offensive line together. The composition of the franchise only deteriorates when you pay these big contracts. How many years are we into the Mahomes contract over in Kansas City, and their defense has, nobody on it. They're paying 3 or 4 guys. I don't like the big contracts. I think the Josh Allen contract probably only works for a couple seasons, and then you see similar deterioration over there like Kansas City. So like you said, I think, and people aren't going to like this either, but I think Kenny Pickett, at the end of the day, out of Pitt, he seems like a Mac Jones candidate to me, who he's probably going to fall. And the guys you've mentioned, Corral and a couple of the other guys that are probably higher rated than him because they maybe play at bigger schools, or, their teams are a little bit better. Kenny Pickett probably falls to the late first round, maybe early second round, maybe later. And you take a flyer on a guy, but it's not going to work if we draft a quarterback early next year and Baker's still around. So there's a lot of decisions to be going on.
I tell you what, I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be traveling very far, because I think he's going to play his NFL career in Pittsburgh.
Really?
I really do. Yeah.
I think
that.
That's
it's weird.
Take.
It's weird because the Steelers are an organization that for the last probably 3-4 years should have had a plan. Mason Rudolph was never a plan. I think they got him like the 3rd round or something like that, maybe late second. I don't remember. That's not a plan. And Dwayne Haskins, Ohio State students we are, and fans and whatever, he just hasn't worked out. That's not for sure. It's a good risk. I agreed with them taking that risk signing Dwayne Haskins, but they don't have the guy there ready. And the reality is Ben's done. Ben has been done. He was done last year. And for whatever reason, he's come back. And you've seen the consequences of that so far. And I think when it comes to the Browns, and if you have to go towards the draft, you talked about it. This team right now is in a position that a rookie quarterback can come in and do good things if they are even remotely talented. Like this offense is not hard. Case Keenum. This is one of my problems. I think for the longest time now, Kevin Stefanski has been running the offense with Baker Mayfield while the offense is set to run as if Case Keenum was the starter. That was one of my problems. I think they have not taken advantage of his strengths. Now, we'll see. I think last year in the playoff game, you saw Alex Van Pelt open things up more in the pass game. I rewatched those highlights today. That is what I want our offense to look like. A great run game, but a heavy dose of a good pass game. Excuse me. Sorry. I'm still sick. I thought I was a lot better than I am, but we're pushing through.
I think Stefanski is more or less, I think the game plan has shifted because of the injury, really. I don't know if anyone is going to admit that up front, but I do watch the Steelers, highlights from the playoffs last year relatively often, and we had good play over the middle. We had good tight end play. Our running backs performed well, of course, and then we had those back breaking screens, some bubble screens of the tight end, and of course the big Nick Chubb touchdown that was a screen. And I feel like we've been seeing that more this year in spots where you're playing teams. You're not gonna beat high powered offenses running bubble screens the whole game. You're not beating Justin Herbert. You're already way behind against Kyler Murray. And I think you probably throw the Chiefs game away just on some bad mistakes. I would not have blamed the offensive play calling, or really the defense at all for that. Those were just bonehead mistakes. But that's what I'm saying with Baker. He doesn't beat Herbert, but he's injured. It's like, how can I gauge a guy if he was healthy and we were 6-1 and he had a 4-1, touchdown interception rate? I'd be saying pay the guy too. I don't want to go to the draft. I don't want to have to trade away a guy who turned this franchise around, and he loves the community, and he does stuff for, he puts the city in a good light with progressive commercials. I don't want to do that, but it's not like I'm going to sit here and be like, oh, we've been so bad for so long, let's just pay him whatever. When I see people on whatever he asks, let's just pay him. That's not how sports works. Now, if you're just a fan and you're saying that, that's fine. But when I see people legitimately doing what we do, commenting on, the teams that we watch and like, and they're like, let's just pay him whatever he wants. We don't want to be 0-16 again. Do you really think Kevin Stefanski is going to let a team be 0-16, even if Case Keenum and Nick Mullins are the quarterback? That's what I was telling Justin last week. And Justin tells me this. He goes, I fully expect us to win this game against Denver. And I looked at him and I was like, me too, because we're a competent organization. I don't care who's at quarterback. I think that's how it would be if anybody. I think if Nick Mullins was playing this week against the Steelers at First Energy, I'd be like, yeah, I think we're probably have a decent chance to win 50-50 at least. Because
let me jump in here real quick, because crucified isn't the right way to say it. That's very extreme. But I've been getting a lot of hate because I said, I think, and I really do believe this. This is not me just, pulling shit out of my ass right now. I genuinely think that Nick Mullins is better than Case Keenum. I really do. I think he's got a better arm. I saw him in the 49ers system, and I think, our offense is very similar. It's not exactly the same. But I think right now, when you compare Case Keenum to Nick Mullins, what Keenum has is experience and veteran leadership. But I think talent-wise, I think Mullins is a little bit better. Am I crazy for saying that?
I think talent-wise, you're probably not crazy, but I would not start Mullins over Case Keenum just because of the lead. I think the intangibles are really good there for Case Keenum, and just being Kevin Stefanski familiar. I'm glad you brought up the 49ers, and I'm glad you brought up the intangibles, because these are 2 points I was going to miss. You see it with these teams on the West Coast, and the 49ers, Super Bowl, Jimmy G. Then they go and draft Trey Lance. Like, that's what I'm talking about. This stuff happens in the NFL. Jimmy G was a quarterback that he was not the staple of that team. They had a good defense, and they had a good offensive line, and they had George Kittle, and they had decent running backs. He couldn't win the Super Bowl. Jimmy G couldn't win the Super Bowl being a game manager. It's a quarterback dominant league. How many pieces of the Rams team did they give up for Matt Stafford? And through 7 games, that looks outstanding. Jared Goff, obviously in a woeful situation, but has never won a game without Sean McVay. That's what I'm talking about. Make a big move that people aren't expecting. I'm sure people were probably like, well, Jared Goff in the Rams camp, they're probably, well, Jared Goff got us to Super Bowl. Why would we move off them? People are moving, front offices are moving off of Super Bowl quarterbacks, losers, albeit, to go get somebody better. So it's not like the Browns could be any different. And here's probably the last Baker point I could think of in my head. I love Baker, his arm, and I love his grit, and that he actually has a chip on his shoulder. Most guys don't play like that. Even the talented guys, I don't think, play like that. Especially, you have to be that type of person to come in and I think really grip this fan base of the Cleveland Browns and, get them behind you. But you have to admit, if you have watched the NFL since Baker's been drafted, he's the worst archetype of quarterback. He's the worst middle ground quarterback that this NFL sees of people that succeed. You got 6'4", 6'5" guys, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. They're going to step up and they're going to step up and be a pocket presence. On the other side, you have Lamar Jackson, MVP. You have Kyler Murray playing on an MVP pace. Those guys who could throw the ball decently are going to run, and they're going to be nightmares for a defense because they're athletes. Baker's right in the middle of both of them. He's 6 foot, 6'1", and he's not really that athletic. That's basically how you could describe Baker Mayfield. So it's like, even if you're looking at the landscape of NFL quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield doesn't fit into any of the two preferable categories. And people say, well, neither did Drew Brees. Okay, Drew Brees came into the league 20 years ago. Do I think Baker Mayfield could end up having a Drew Brees-like career? I don't think it's impossible. I just don't see how if Drew Brees is your ceiling, I don't see any Drew Breeses around the league that are playing really well that just stand back there and pass and that are short.
Yeah. The only one you could say is Russell Wilson, but he's kind of an outlier.
Right.
I mean, at this point, it's hard to compare the two. And I'm glad you brought up the Rams because that's kind of my argument when I think of why the Browns should, at the very least, consider moving. A team like the Rams, they have a ton of talent. They know their window. They looked back and said, listen, this guy's not going to take us there. He's not, even though we've been to the Super Bowl, he's not going to win it for us. So I think the Browns are in a similar situation. I think it is a little bit different because I think Baker, from a talent standpoint, I think he's got a much stronger arm. I think he's much more accurate and better as a passer. It's just the Jared Goff thing is interesting because, he is a part of a long list of guys, going back to Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff. These guys go high. Teams look back and they say, we think we messed up. We paid this guy. What do we do now? And then you see guys move on. And then you have some situation like the Jets. And this is one thing I think people don't really talk about. If the Browns were to move Baker, I think his value is actually higher than most people will probably think. You look at what the Jets gave up not gave up, what they got for Sam Darnold. Didn't they get like a first round pick and
I don't remember really,
like 2 3s or something? They got a pretty good haul.
How Darnold's played and probably going to play. Yes, they probably flipped him for very good. And Jameis Winston's a great point. Granted, he was, he threw 45 interceptions that year, but did he throw 45 touchdowns in 1 year? 40 touchdowns. They moved on, got Tom Brady, and they won the Super Bowl. I think if Tom Brady is the quarterback in an alternate universe, if Tom Brady's the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns last year, I think we win the Super Bowl with with how bad our defense was. I think we definitely beat Chad Henne 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think this organization's got to come down to a decision of, is Baker Mayfield Carson Wentz? Is he Jared Goff? Is he Jameis Winston?
Exactly.
But there's also this point here, and we could talk about this. The NFL right now really doesn't have a middle tier quarterback contract right now, as far as the young guys, and the 30-ish million, whatever, that would come out to, hopefully not 37. That would be insane. But if you think, let's throw out 34, right? Let's say Baker gets 5 years, 34 million. That would put him with the guys of a Kirk Cousins. And I think until proven otherwise, I think that's his value in the NFL. I think if you traded Baker to, let's just say, the Broncos, right? They're a team that's constantly needed to look for a quarterback, hasn't really found it. The way Baker's kind of established, if you said Denver will trade you Baker, give us what's your best offer, I think you get a pretty good haul, especially given that the Broncos offensively, they got the weapons. Their offensive line is decent. Their defense, it's not the Super Bowl defense, but it's got a lot of good players on it. I think you could get a first round pick and some change for Baker. So that would put you at 2 first rounders if you're saying hypothetically this year. And Denver's going to be picking high. So, it's worth thinking about because you could have Baker at that mid-tier quarterback contract, or you could move him and I think still get a pretty decent amount in return. And you could flip that, get your guy at quarterback who you believe is your quarterback, unless they can somehow get an Aaron Rodgers. I don't think so. I just don't see that happening. But I think that's your scenarios there. What do you think about as far as what the Browns could get for him?
It's such a sticky situation for sure. And it's not even, it's a good question because I don't know what people would give us in return for Baker. What I'm more interested about is, let's just take the AFC just for talking purposes. Let's just say open market, Baker Mayfield open market. Is anybody else in the AFC paying him 30, 34, 35 mil? I'm really not too certain. I don't think I'll take that back. I think Denver probably would.
I was
think
just about to
Denver
say,
would.
I think Denver to me is the for sure team that would.
Because they're probably put together better. You know, they got younger weapons, like you said. It seems like they have a pretty good running attack. Their offensive line is okay. I don't know if their defense was playing well until injuries, but I think Denver is probably your landing point for Baker, just let's say in the open market. But there's not many other teams where, like, it's to the point where, do the Browns lowball on purpose because of his market, because of his being injured this year? Like, I don't think the Texans paying Baker 35 million fixes their franchise. Yeah. I don't see that working out for them. And it seems like a lot of the other teams around the AFC, I don't think the Steelers would pay him that much. Let's just say, hypothetically, that would be disgusting if that was the case. If I ever saw that, is disgusting though. Thinking about Baker in a different uniform is definitely disgusting, but it's like, even the bad teams like the Jaguars, they got their guys. Every team in our division is pretty much locked up for the formidable future. I just don't see him having a huge market. But I guess if there's teams in the NFC that are thrown into the mix and that they want to make a trade, I could see us getting at least a first rounder back for sure. And I'm open to Baker Mayfield trades. I really am, just because at this moment, all of this that we're talking about, I'm saying in this moment, if he goes on, I said this preseason on the video with you, I believe, when Justin was involved. If he comes out and he plays top 5 quarterback in the league, I'll pay him 40 mil a year if he comes out and, throws 40 touchdowns and has 10 interceptions, and that's fine with me. But it's like, I'm not paying the guy or keeping him on the team for emotional reasons, which I think is where a lot of people get wrapped up in it.
Yeah, I think this is the big point here. Your success is defined by what is surrounding you. And right now you're looking around, and the AFC North, you already talked about it, but the AFC as a whole, full of great.
He's like the 6th best quarterback in the AFC this year.
Yeah.
6th or 7th.
Full of great elite quarterback play. And I definitely think if he gets traded, he goes to the NFC. I think that is the best case for him, honestly.
Yep.
And who knows? Russell Wilson was trying to get out of Seattle, and similar. I don't know if you could say similar play styles, but when it comes to designing an offense around the two players, I think it's similar. I could be wrong there. I don't know, but I think potentially that could be a spot. Denver. It's kind of weird because I could see Baker being the quarterback of the New York Giants if they decide to move from Daniel Jones. I see Baker on a lot of teams. I really do. But for the Browns, I don't see free agency is how they go with this, because then I think you're putting yourself in a Denver situation where you're constantly going through the Bridgewaters and the Keenums. I think if you're going to do this, you got to do it and go big. You got to take the risk and go young.
That's my favorite route.
Yeah. And this is a weird draft to do that in. So, we talk about Andrew Berry and how good he's been in the draft and getting some of these guys who, have slipped and that kind of thing. This is going to be a real big test, because if they move on from Baker and they don't get the right guy at quarterback, that's the kind of stuff that loses you jobs as a GM.
It does.
So it's a big decision. I think it could alter the franchise for a long time. But, the reality is it's not me or you making the decision. It's Andrew
Thankfully.
Berry. Yeah.
I don't know how Andrew Berry is going to make the decision, but I really do trust him I've trusted him as far as contracts for the most part. I've only trusted him solely in talent identification. I think he might be the best talent identifier GMs in the league, top 5 for sure, especially with the way this last draft has panned out with some of the guys we've got. And like you said, I would not want to be making this decision, but I think that I don't know, man. There's just other people I'd rather lock up. I'd rather
Mhm.
lock up Wyatt Teller for like a bigger 4 or 5 year contract before we even get to Baker Mayfield. I know those two are probably going to have to be juggled simultaneously. I'm a big, I'm pretty much out so far through 7 games this year on Denzel Ward.
Yeah.
Not saying he's not talented. I just think he's not available most of the time. He doesn't make these big plays like that you see the dominant corners in the league do. No interception so far, and he really can't stay on the field. So, but Andrew Berry, tough job, as you're alluding to.
Yeah, before we wrap up here, we play the Steelers this week. Do you think Baker plays? We've seen him in practice so far. He looks, I don't want to say he looks like normal Baker, but you're seeing velocity, you're seeing that arm strength that we've talked about. Do you think he is going to play, and do you think he should play?
I think, I think whoever, I think if this is what's going to make me mad. If he takes the first team reps all week and then he doesn't play,
Mm-hmm.
I will be very upset about that. Like, not even fake upset or nothing. Like, I'm going to be pissed off. I've been kind of pissed off how the whole injury is, between how it happened, between what we've taken so long of how like we have no information, I feel like, coming from the team and the staff, which I partially blame on our local media because they're a bunch of hacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't trust them with information either, really.
Yeah.
But
how do we find out through Jay Glazer an hour before kickoff that he's got a broken bone? Like, that's
how do
not
we
a
hear that
small
it's
detail.
how do we hear it's partial and then like 2 weeks ago is always torn? I don't know. I don't even know
Yeah,
what's going on with a lot of people. Nick Chubb's injury was phantom. Nevertheless, I think Baker should play this week, and I hope he does if he's taking the first team reps.
Now, if he does play, do you think that changes our chances of winning? What do you think is going to happen as far as the final score?
No, I think whoever you put out there, I think if Baker plays and takes first team reps, I think that increases our chances of winning. I think if Case Keenum took first team reps and played, our chances of winning would still be relatively high. But if Baker takes first team reps and then Case Keenum plays, that's your worst case scenario. I think we win. I think we get the job done. I think your biggest headache is trying to limit Najee Harris catching the ball, not running the ball. I think catching the ball. And if we need Jadeveon Clowney to play, because this is the best quarterback offensive line combo we could face as our Browns defensive line. Reminds me of Minnesota and Kirk Cousins, a quarterback who can't move, offensive line that's probably bottom tier. I think we win. I had this as a blowout. I'm
Really?
still gonna, like 41-10. I think.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if
I
it's going to be
wish.
that bad. I think it's going to be like 27-17, but
Yeah.
the score probably doesn't tell that much. We probably control the game.
I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I really do.
Yep.
I really hope we win this game because
We need to win this game.
Well, we need to, and I'm watching it with a bunch of Steelers fans, and
been there.
Yeah, I don't exactly want to have to bite the bullet there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. Blitz the hell out of them. I think with this offensive line, they don't pass downfield. Najee can't get anything going in the run game. Dominant out of the backfield as a pass or as a pass catcher.
Yep.
But and then offensively, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you because I don't know what you're getting from your quarterback position. Run the ball as usual. I think that's got to be our game plan.
Hope Chubb plays. The disappointing thing about this week is that this is where I loved watching Joke every game he's played, but this was like the real, like, if Joke was playing, I don't think they're scoring very much because I think he's eating up Najee the whole game, especially on screens and catching the ball.
I think dark horse player to have a big game this game, I think, is Grant Delpit. I think for his is flexibility the right word to say there? I don't know.
Being dynamic.
There you go. He can do a lot of things. So how we saw JOK dropping back into coverage and then coming off the edge, I think you're going to see a lot of that from Grant Delpit this week. And I'm looking forward to it. I think Ben, remember that year? I think it was Denzel's rookie year. Ben threw like 3 picks in the Browns game. I think you could see a 2-pick game for Ben at least.
I hope so. We haven't had one yet. We haven't had a big turnover game yet, I don't believe. I'd like to see 3 interceptions.
I think this defense, if Joe Woods is smart, which, to be determined, I think you play press and you blitz this game. I think it's really it sounds more simpler than it probably is, but
Right.
it's easier for us to say than what they do. So,
Yep.
with that being said, you got anything else you want to say here before we wrap
Nope.
up?
Take some deep breaths watching the game with Steelers fans.
Oh,
I
I
went
know.
to where I went to college. It was the North Hills of Pittsburgh, literally 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Lived with 5 Steelers fans
Oh
for
my
4
gosh.
straight years. So games were fun, but got to take deep breaths.
Yeah, it's hard when your best friend's a Steelers fan. You just fight 24/7. But yeah, I mean, guys, go check them out. Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I'll link all their Twitters and the channel, so you don't have to look too hard to find it. So, Justin, next time will be on with us. Hopefully,
Yep.
he gets better. Um, I need to get better too. I think it's just going around. I've had so many people I know been sick. So stay safe out there, kids. Anyway, so hopefully we win Sunday, and we'll talk to you in the next one.